It's time for a disturbing lack of brass facts. Instead, we're going to talk about scopes, specifically the PLX-C from Primary Arms. Its first focal plane, 1 to 8x, 17 ounces, and over $1,000. I've reviewed this scope before. It's the Nightforce NX8, and that's unfortunately not really a good scope. By all accounts, this thing should suck, especially since the 1 to 6x GLX, which I've reviewed previously, has more or less the same reticle, same form factor, same tube dimensions, same company, is first focal plane, is extremely lackluster, and punches well below its price point. So, somehow, someway, I'm really glad to say the PLX-C 1 to 8x from Primary Arms is one of the best LPVOs, and probably the best first focal plane LPVO I've used to date. Real quick, biases on the table. I think 1x on an LPVO is critical, and the largest component of what determines a good or bad scope. I'll explain why, but if you aren't of this viewpoint, this video might not make much sense to you, because I'm going to be heavily diving into 1x's on LPVOs. But before we talk about the riveting dynamic of 1x scope autism, sponsor time from Nightline. Night vision is cool. Night vision is basically a superpower. So if you want night vision, you should probably go ahead and buy some. That's generally how that works. But the whole task of buying night vision can be daunting. Nightline offers competitive prices, a large inventory, so you don't need to wait 3 months after buying it, and the ability to call in and discuss what specific tube you are getting or want, which is nice considering the unique nature of night vision tubes. So when and if you decide to take your degenerate firearm spending and preparedness to the next level, consider checking out Nightline. And if you're feeling extra generous, use the link down in the description. 15% off of your night vision purchase, which is actually a fair bit of money in the context of a over $3,000 PVS 14. Anyways, back to the scopes. If you basically look at all of my LPVO reviews, I spend a lot of time discussing the 1x setting, because as mentioned, without a good 1x, I don't think you have a good LPVO. The 1x is the single most expensive and compromising feature on your LPVO. So if you don't use it or you don't have a good 1x, the whole premise of just buying this compromised optic doesn't make any sense. I contend that if you buy an LPVO, it is a conscious choice that you want a 1x for most of the time, most of the use cases, but still want quality magnification over a magnifier. If you only cared about the magnification, you should go buy a rifle scope. If you only care about 1x, well, you should go buy a red dot. The LPVO is that middle ground, but it can only be that middle ground if the 1x is at least in the same ballpark as a red dot. It'll never be the same, but at least close. When we shoot with both eyes open. That's what we should be doing. Our brain then does some hokey-ass black magic and combines these two images, two very distinctly separate images, one from the scope, one from your off eye, meld it into a singular image, and we are able to shoot both eyes open fairly effectively. This is an intuitive concept in theory if you are human. Everyone has a unique threshold of how bad or how mismatched the two images can be and still effectively bring the images together, collimate the image. If it's bad, you're generally going to be seeing double, which is absolutely a non-starter for a 1x solution. This whole double images or slight shifting of images is obviously really bad when we're trying to place a precise reticle on a very small target at speed near subconsciously during a recoil cycle outside of Instagram target ranges. Now, this is absolutely a sliding scale, with some scopes getting closer than others, and other humans being able to handle different degrees of non-collimation. But I do not consider the threshold of quote-unquote good 1x crossed until your brain is tricked. That is, in standard lighting conditions beyond about 5 to 10 yards, your brain thinks it's looking at two identical images, thus you see one image. And that's why the PLX-C is so spectacular. It has, essentially, true 1x within percentage points of something like a Razor HD, but it does this while being first focal plane and coming in at 17 ounces. This means we have a far more complex reticle, but we have the benefits of a second focal plane design with a very nice 1x. Thus far, basically no other first focal plane scope seems to be pulling off as good of a 1x image at this weight without costing as much as my Jeep. I just want to point out and direct your focus to the footage, right? Because most of the time people don't pay attention. Look how good this looks. Cameras distinctly struggle to film 1x, 8x, and everything in between because cameras are cameras. But even so, the footage here really distinctly shows a impressive 1x. If you pay attention to the stuff flowing in and out of the field of view, there is minimal distortion. And this doesn't necessarily just apply to the 1x. Due to how the scope is set up, it looks really good from 1 to about 4x, where it just feels really crisp, flat, and incredibly usable. which is a range of magnification that you'll actually use more often than you think. In fact, I probably spent more time on the 3 to 4x than I did on the 8x during this review for medium range shooting. The PLX-C also has another 1x trick up its sleeve. Due to the position of the eye relief and bezel size, you get the coveted Razor HD effect. That is, the edge of the scope and the bezel sort of fade into nothing. It looks very thin, and it's like you're looking at a floating image instead of looking through an actual tube. Alright, let's talk about the rest of the PLX-C. The 1X, obviously, stellar, but how about the rest of it? It's okay. The glass itself is incredibly standard. 3.6 out of 5. Not great, not terrible. It's a reference. It's nothing like the EOTech Voodoo glass, but it gets the job done. I notice, once again, color separations on a higher magnification, which seems to be a trend with these. Also, because of the aggressive shift from 1 to 8x, you will notice a slight focus shift. Not terrible. About 95% of my long-range shooting you see in the footage was about out to 400, and it was done with the scope focused on the 1x setting. However, if you're taking a very precise shot, you're generally going to want to adjust the diopter. I found just a slight 1/8 spin was enough to get it that last bit of the way there for focus on the max magnification. Reticle-wise, the 1X, we have the usual issues of first focal plane designs, where the actual center aiming point is very small and faint. We have the big horseshoe, which gets us out to about 15 yards or so, and by about 100 yards, we're going to find ourselves beginning to dial. Obviously, these numbers are highly dependent on the target size and the stability of your shooting platform. Everything in between, you're gonna generally run into issues because the reticle is so small and you're trying to shoot, relatively speaking, kind of fast on the 1x setting that you may find yourself losing the reticle in the, background noise. Now, it's worth noting, this first focal plane design is actually way better than most other first focal plane designs that I've messed with. The Voodoo, the Night Force without illumination, the Razor HD Gen 3 without illumination, the Sig Tango, you name it. So certainly that's up here. However, I think there's still room for improvement. Something like the Vortex Strike Eagle first focal plane, of all things, has a much more elegant design with a small semi-translucent horseshoe and a very aggressive T-post for up-close shooting. I was a big fan of that. As we bump up through the higher magnifications, we get the typical primary arms affair. In many shooting conditions, everything with this reticle just clicks. We have useful features, Christmas tree reticles, 42 different ways of ranging the target, and 8x magnification makes life a lot easier. When the target is contrasted, or you just have a good bead on the target, you have a lot of time, everything lines up, you end up getting really easy hits on target. Or, if you miss, which is a thing, you're going to get effective, easy follow-up shots, especially with the Christmas tree design. All of these features come into play, and life is good. However, unfortunately, just as often with this reticle design and scope combo, you're going to find it fighting you every step of the way. This reticle is extremely busy, and it does not lend itself well for scanning for targets, especially in poor contrast, which already hurts this type of scope design. The glass quality is also borderline, and the end result is a very frustrating higher magnification experience in certain conditions. While dialing back does help us with the exit pupil issue, and alleviates it even, it does not help with the reticle being extremely busy, as it is a first focal plane design, thus the reticle scales with the magnification, and there's a lot of stuff in the way of us actually seeing things. You don't always end up on target, you end up left, you end up right, you end up high. And the amount of times my target was under the horseshoe or in this ranging feature thing here on the right, and I didn't realize it, was kind of frustrating. There are a lot of good things on this reticle. I honestly kind of miss the older generations of primary arms reticles that had all the features we wanted. Ranging, BDC, auto ranging, wind leads, chevron, whatever. Maybe not the chevron. But these current ones, these reticles are feature creeping way too hard, where it seems like each new primary arms reticle needs to justify itself over the last one with 2 to 3 new features added, despite the fact that the usability seems to actually be going down. Am I nitpicking? Oh yeah. Is this scope usable? Very much so. Does this scope in certain, especially low light scenarios, fight you every step of the way? Also yes. The scope is excellent, but to be fair and honest for you, the consumer, if anything on the scope will sway you from not buying it, it's gonna probably be the reticle at the higher magnification settings. I personally can deal with it, but I think many people will not be able to deal with it. I'd love to see some fat trimmed off this reticle, to be frank. Anyways, moving on. The final feature is lightning fast, real quick. Good turrets, but who cares? You're not dialing. You can replace it with an exposed turret that comes in the box, but it's not locked, and once again, you're not dialing. This isn't a good substitute for long-range dedicated rifle scopes, nor is the reticle design really all that great for dialing. Comes with a throw lever. The throw lever range is smooth, feels premium. It's a hair stiff, but it's nothing like the full arm day workout you're going to be getting with a Razor. The illumination is useful for dusk shooting. That's about it. I got a primary arms mount with it for fun. 6 ounces, fairly cheap. A good middle ground solution, being heavier, but not the colossal weight of the other heavy budget scope mounts, but still being more durable compared to the lightweight budget scope mounts, like an Aero Precision. As a side point, for someone that might be wanting to get into LPVOs, you may look at this reticle design and this scope design and think, wow, this is a good long-range dedicated scope. You will be fairly disappointed if you try to force it in that role. Does it work? Yeah, it's got the magnification, but you're lacking parallax adjust, you're lacking a large objective, you have a tiny exit pupil. So once again, it's certainly capable of doing these kinds of things, but if you want to do long range as a rule, there are better designs out there. This is more meant to do long range in a pinch, for the lack of a better term. Alright, let's wrap it up. I spent a lot of time harping on this one gripe: the scope is busy, but on all the other factors, especially the more objective factors, the ones that matter, the 1x, the weight, the eye relief, the 1x, the price, the 1x, it has a very robust, complete list of box checked. As far as I know, isn't actually achieved in any other scope in this price bracket, or in fact, any scope at all. I personally can overlook a reticle design that sometimes pisses me off, especially since some other times it's pretty usable, and the rest of the scope experience is really well fleshed out. Well, that's about that. This scope, as the cool kids say, is kind of a banger. If I didn't have a multi-year, long-term relationship with the Elcan, I would probably put this on my main rifle. And for sure, I would probably consider this scope in my top 3 LPVOs on the market at this time. If you want to buy one, good luck finding it in stock, but I have an affiliate link down below if you're feeling generous. Ditto with Nightline if you want to buy some night vision. Okay, that's that. Thanks for watching. See ya. Dog. Dog. Hello. Do you like the snow? There's cocaine. What?